Fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
In every pair of Tecovas boots, you can expect handmade quality, first wear comfort, and timeless Western style. A great pair of Western boots will elevate a casual look or add a refined flair that'll draw both eyes and compliments. Tecovas boots are always made from premium bovine and exotic leathers, and with occasional resoling, they will last a lifetime. The best way to shop for boots is at your local Tecovas store, where you'll be greeted by the smell of fresh leather and a friendly smile. Come on in, grab a cold one, get fitted by a pro, and shop the latest styles. We also offer custom branding and leather stamping if you want to personalize your boots or fine leather goods. As spring makes its way into summer, stay cool in a short sleeve, moisture-wicking pearl snap, or make your own shade with one of their classic straw hats, new in both men's and women's styles. And if you're planning to hit the road, Tecovas' ever-growing lineup of rugged and full-grain leather bags will get you where you're headed in style and are built to last decades. Visit tecovas.com. That's TECOVAS.com, and don't go gently, y'all.
Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together.
So, Orion, never met you before. Luke bailed out on us. We were going to do the podcast with you, me, and Luke. So it's just me and you. I've never met you before, but I've been following you for a long time, and I really like your content. What have you been up to lately?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Clay. It's good to meet you at the very least. Hopefully we'll get a chance to meet in person one of these days. We see where Luke's priorities lie, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I've been busy kind of getting back into the swing of things. I took a winter break this year to focus on some life stuff and re-up the creativity. I kind of usually take a winter break, but I took a little bit of a longer one this year. And yeah, so the last couple months I've been posting new content, trying new things, just busy in general, work and life. So trying to tie it all together.
How long was your break?
I think it was from like end of October to like late March, early April.
Wow.
Yeah.
That had to have felt pretty good.
Yeah, it helps kind of restore the creativity. There's not a ton of foraging to do in Colorado in the winter, and it gives me an opportunity to sort of relax and refresh so I'm not burning out, instead of taking a break during the season, I just take a long break at the end. That may change in the future, but for now, that's the modus operandi I'm going with.
I get so entirely sick of social media so often, and I just went through and severely lowered the amount of people that I follow. And I did that because I'm at the point where I'm like, this is not adding much benefit to my life. And I don't know if you're like feeling that same way, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit.
No, I have made some changes in the last year or so that helped a lot. The main one for me, I don't spend time on there really as a user. Aside from on TikTok, I'll scroll through the videos on TikTok, just to get entertainment and stuff. And then I watch longer YouTube videos for entertainment or learning purposes. But Otherwise, I'm mostly on there just to do my own thing, post my videos, answer comments, check in on what my friends are doing, chat with people. Um, it really helped me to turn off all of my notifications.
Mhm.
That was like the big jump from kind of being all consuming to a little more freeing. So now I hop on, once or twice a day, check on comments, questions, answer those, and then sort of move on. Um, that might create less engagement, but the reason that I do this content is more to educate others, and I don't really care that much about the engagement and the numbers. Like it feels good to have a large following and to have a lot of people who enjoy your content and are saying nice things. But at the end of the day, I would continue to do it whether those things existed or not, because I like just enjoy sharing and educating people about these things that I'm so passionate about.
I completely get that. I was actually recently thinking, uh, wondering really how many you answered for me, but I was wondering how many foragers on Instagram and TikTok would still partake of the foraging world in general if there was no, social media to share it on. And because I don't know how long you've been foraging for, but for me personally, you know, I'm coming up on like the 2 decades mark, and I've been really into the woods for a long time. And I did it well before social media. 2016, somebody told me I should go and make an account on social media. And so what's that been like for you? Same thing?
Yeah, pretty similar. Around 25 years mushroom hunting, and like here and there foraging when I was younger. Just around the house, I didn't really know what it was, but as my dad was teaching me things or taking me out into the woods and teaching me plants, that was sort of just part of my youth. And I grew up fishing, so if you count that in the wild food world, then pretty much my whole life has been at least some aspect of wild food in it. But yeah, I started mushroom hunting when I was around 10. And so that's kind of the marker I put on it for 24 years, 24, a little over
Wow,
24 years.
that's cool. And was that predominantly brought on by your dad, then it sounds like?
Yeah, it mostly was, both my parents really supported and allowed me to explore and ask questions and be in nature. We lived on like a small acre, mountain acre or in northern New Mexico, just south of Colorado. And so, my playtime was going outside and climbing trees and hitting sticks with other sticks and looking at plants and,
Mhm.
learning the things around me. And I realized that at some point, I learned all of the plants and trees that were sort of growing around our property. So I knew what a juniper was, and a pinyon pine, and a lodgepole, and a ponderosa, and a lilac bush, and a plum tree, and an apple tree, just because my dad pointed them out or taught them to us as we were growing up.
It's so interesting that you retained it. I have 3 children of my own, and my 2 older kids who are 14 and 11, they are they've grown up their entire life around it, and it's very boring to them.
Mhm.
They don't really like it. However, I just took 3 days off of work and went and I was a chaperone for my daughter's event at a school thing. And one of her friends has this burning desire for foraging. And I did the exact same event last year. And this little girl just like hangs out with me the whole time. And all she wants to know is all the plants. And it's just funny that, you can want to instill it in your own kids. And it's just like if they don't like it, they don't want anything to do with it. But like somebody else's kid can be, so interested.
Totally. Yeah, that's very true. And, I had, ebbs and flows in that whole career of foraging. Um, the fishing when I was young was kind of the like main draw into that wild food world. I was going fishing, when I was 4 or 5 with my dad.
Mm.
And then I grew up traveling to Minnesota every summer to see family and would fish, most of the time I was there. It was just like the thing that I loved growing up.
Mhm.
And I also, was a big video gamer growing up and in college, backed away from foraging to meet new people and try new things. But camping was always an aspect of it. Fishing was always an aspect of it. And, it ended up pulling me back in towards the end of my college career. And then I really dove in with the background of study in natural resources, sort of supporting that like interest.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So, I got a question then. Are you still a gamer?
Yes, yes, not nearly as much as I used to be, and I
Mm.
tend to play more board games than video games, but yeah, I still do occasionally.
Hmm, that's cool. Um, Me and my kids have one game that I'll play with them, and it's Super Smash Bros.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I grew up playing that one on the N64.
Oh, really? Cool. Um, I
Mhm.
I think it's fun to like break down these sorts of stereotypes. Everybody thinks like a forager should be like this person that's like, like you're meditating in the woods or something. And I think it's kind of cool to have people like you on the podcast and just break down those things and go like, Orion is a normal person. He just also forages.
Totally, yeah, and I happen to have a platform, that has some public attention to it, but I'm just a normal dude, and I like other things aside from foraging. Behind me is most of my foraging books, like the listeners won't be able to see this, but the top like six shelves and on top are all foraging or cookbooks. But that one right there, those are all D&D books,
Oh, really?
So yeah, I do non-foraging, whatever that means, quote unquote, non-foraging
Uh,
stuff too.
you mean you lived
It's
your life?
just yeah, it's an aspect of my life, a big one, but it's not the entirety of it.
Yeah. So what got you into the whole social media thing and how did you get such a big following and was it all of a sudden? Was it, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I started Forage Colorado, my business, in 2015, and the idea was at the time to create a community. So I was getting deeper into foraging and wild foods, and at the time I was, really big into internet forums, and so I was like, well, I'll start my own and gather a community, and we can all learn from each other. And turns out there weren't that many people doing it. And
Mhm.
so instead of a community, it became me teaching other people quite quickly. And so I started with a website and a Facebook page. And I was, mostly writing here and there, doing a few classes, helping people identify things online. Um, and then I think I started Instagram around the same time too, but wasn't really serious about it. And I didn't really start serious posting Instagram video content until 2019. Before that, I was just doing pictures here and there, food that
Mhm.
I was making, links to articles and things. And then in 2019, I started posting pretty seriously with video content. I had dabbled with longer form videos in the past. There's some videos of me hunting on YouTube in the YouTube world if someone might dig those up. But yeah, I was always interested in it, but never took it super seriously. And then um, I think it was 2020 or 2021 that I got my first video that got 1 million views. And it was like the most like low effort video. I was just like I challenged myself to post something every day
Mhm.
that first year. And after that, I would post like every 2 or 3 days. And I posted a video. It was like 7 seconds long of I was making pine cone syrup, Lugolio, and I had a jar of pine cones and sugar. And then I was like, from this, and then I cut it and had a jar of finished pine cone syrup. And I was like, to this. And that video got like over 1 million views, just, the most simple, like before and after.
Mhm.
And I think that bumped me from like 5,000 to 17,000 on Instagram.
Holy crap.
Um, yeah. And then, it was sort of um, steady growth after that. 2022, I think I hit 40,000. And then last year, I took a more structured approach to my content. I created some like series, like my Edible or Not series, where I sort of do the same format and it's very repeatable and,
Mhm.
it's in the same format so people know what to expect. And several of those got over 1 million views. Facebook, especially, was enjoying of those. And I went from, I think, like 20,000 followers on Facebook to 320,000 followers.
Oh my God.
Just from videos getting millions of views on there. And then Instagram, the same kind of deal. It went from 40 to 80 some last year.
What about TikTok?
TikTok, I have like 50,000 on.
Okay.
The, the the main thing that I try to do with my, this is like a peek behind the curtains, but my workflow is I post the same video on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
Hmm.
And so I'm restricted by YouTube for short form to 1 minute.
Hmm.
So TikTok doesn't like 1 minute videos anymore. So my videos on there generally don't do that great. Um, I don't know if that, like I said, doesn't really matter to me that much, and TikTok might at some point not exist anymore. um,
Hmm.
so I'm not putting that much stock into it, but I have started editing some videos for TikTok length first. So like I'll film the rough video, I'll edit it down, and then whatever length it is, I'll add captions and export that version. And then I'll edit a second version down to a minute. So I have started doing that. And the goal is eventually to do more longer form content for YouTube, and then cut short form out of those. So we'll see if
Yeah.
we get there.
I just heard about a friend told me about what's it called? Some service that you can actually load a video into. Like say you got like a 10-minute video and then you can load it in and it'll actually
Mhm.
cut up and make a whole bunch of little short segments that you can then use on other platforms. And I thought that sounded pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a couple of those like AI powered short form content
Yeah.
parsers.
Well, AI topic of the day. Are you on the foraging bandwagon of being an AI hater, or do you think that it's a little bit more nuanced than that?
I think it's definitely more nuanced. Like I mentioned, I grew up being a video gamer. I'm sort of a tech nerd
Hmm.
a little bit. I build my own computers and stuff.
Wow.
I learned how to code in 2022 just because I'd always wanted to. Um, so I think that it has its uses, but I don't think that its uses are writing shitty AI foraging books.
Yeah. Oh, I would totally agree with you there. Yep.
Yeah, I think the technology will be better served learning essentially what we as humans do with pattern recognition and applying that to identification helpers.
Hmm.
I don't know that I would ever trust one, with full confirmation of edibility. But even now, like if I run into a plant that I don't know, I'll
Hmm.
take a picture of it and like hit Google Lens on my phone and just like see where it takes me.
Hmm.
And just from that like zero knowledge, which isn't all that often because I've got, a lot of like foundational knowledge that I can sort of be like, hey, that looks like this family. So let's
Hmm.
start there. But if I run into one that I just have no idea, snap a picture. Usually it's like house plants or things, that I see at a nursery that
Hmm.
I'm just like, what's this? And that can get you from zero to like family or even genus, or it can get the species right sometimes, very quickly instead of do the research. But I still think that doing the research builds a better knowledge base for beginning foragers. So I always recommend like take the time to really dig in and learn and research and figure out how to identify things without using the quick methods, because it helps you learn them so much better.
Oh, I agree completely. One time, a couple of years ago, at a foraging class, somebody took a picture of a plant that I had just talked about, which was a black currant, and then told me that I had mistakenly identified it and that it was another plant. I can't remember what plant they said. And I was like, no, that's definitely a black currant. So those
That's
snap,
ridiculous.
yeah. Um, but I totally join in with you there. If there's a plant that I don't know, I will take a picture of it. And it sounds like you have an Android. I have an iPhone, but I'll hit the
Mm.
look up plant on my iPhone, and it'll get kind of close, you know.
Yeah, it's I tell new foragers that when I'm teaching classes and stuff, like I often get the question about like what's the best app to use. And they're all pretty equivalent. But the idea is get you from 0 to 60% or 70%, and then you finish to
Yeah.
to kind of learn. Um, in that way, it's a really powerful tool, and can, if used correctly, can really help sort of more quickly build a knowledge base if you're taking the time to understand like why that plant is that plant. Like why does it fit in this family? What traits does it have that match other plants in that family that I might know? Those sorts of questions can help sort of connect the wires and connect the dots and build on that knowledge instead of just the instant gratification of like, okay, I know what that is and I'm going to forget it in 2 minutes.
Yeah. Um, I'm actually about to go to the Great Lakes Foragers Gathering next week. And last year at the Great Lakes Foragers Gathering, I did a quiz. I brought foragers up on the stage, and in front of everybody, we had this quiz where we I questioned everybody on like range map, scientific names of plants, things like that. And I made up the whole quiz off the top of my head. And I was actually surprised at how many foragers I see online that were at the Great Lakes Foragers Gathering didn't just automatically know all these scientific names and all these things. And it made me think that maybe there's a great chunk of the foraging instructors out there that just kind of like will remember it for a video online and then momentarily just like kind of forget it. And that's not to disrespect any of them.
Yeah,
Some
I
people's
think
memories, yeah, work differently.
for sure. Yeah, it's a lot to remember. I think that's true. There's aspects of that I don't commit to memory. But the I have a tool that I've built and am building. It's a foraging calendar, so it sort of is like a database of species, and then puts them in like seasons for easy sorting, and then it breaks them down into their edible parts and the seasons for those parts. And so I have that like like semi-botanical descriptions that are more layman,
Mm.
range and habitats and those sorts of things. And so one, it allows me to quickly pull up that information if I don't remember it. But it also helps me learn it as I'm building those things. So
Yeah.
yeah, but otherwise, like I don't know that I would be able to of my whole knowledge base, correctly. I could probably get a good estimate just based on what I know. Is it a weedy plant? Then I could probably make a good guess at it. Is it
Yeah.
a native plant?
Mhm.
I know my Western, Rocky Mountain plants pretty well, but if you ask me about a native plant to the Midwest, I probably struggle.
Yeah.
I know some of them, but it's a totally different ecosystem over there.
Yeah. And it sounds like you've spent quite a bit of time in Minnesota.
Yep, yeah, at least a small portion of, my summer, pretty much every year since I was born.
Wow. Even now?
Yep, yep.
Oh, cool. When are you usually out there?
It's usually like early July.
Oh, so you
So
never get to harvest rice.
no, no, I've never done rice. I'd really like to do wild rice one of these years, and I usually miss like the good mushroom season. Um, there's some mushrooms around, early black walnuts. Sometimes I can get some, for nocino or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, Plenty of plants, but generally my time when I'm there is mostly spent spending time with family and doing a little bit of fishing. And sometimes I see Tim, Minnesota forager.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you going to the big city then? Or are you going up north? Where are you going?
Yeah, we usually, do like a mix of up north and Twin Cities area. This year, we're just going to be spending time in the Twin Cities because we have less time. So we're just going to go. Our family has a lake house that they all kind of share, and so we're going to spend some time at the lake house.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
My my racing partner of many, many years up and just moved to the Twin Cities. And
Oh,
so I am this year. I don't know that I've ever been to the Twin Cities, and I this year I'm actually going to go out and visit him out there, and then I think we're going to hit up some racing lakes somewhere around there.
that's really cool. One of these years I'm going to make somebody take me on a racing trip just so I can experience it. But I think you'll like the Twin Cities. They're cool, very cool area. Lots of cool things and lots of natural spaces within them, which is very very cool.
Yeah, it definitely seems from Tim's posts, the things that I see, like he's got some cool stuff going on over there.
Hmm.
And then Awamni, right? The restaurant that's there. Eh,
Yeah, I have not had the chance to eat there yet, but I want to.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Minnesota in general just seems like a pretty cool state. Last summer I stayed, me and my racing partner, we camped on what's that giant lake? We camped right on the shore. I can't remember the name right now.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah. Well, this lake in particular is humongous. You know, it's like you can't even see across the thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Either way, we were harvesting rice for like 5 days with a broken push pole, or 4 days.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, so other than that, what kind of foraging things are you you sound like you've really nailed the foraging thing out in the Rockies. What sort of like places in the country haven't you gone to, or what places are you excited to try foraging of different things?
Yeah. Top of my list of things that I have not experienced would be coastal foraging. Um, either Oregon coast. I've got a lot of friends in Oregon, or East Coast, Northeast. One of my best friends is moving to Maine as we speak. So I'll probably have an opportunity when I visit him to do some coastal foraging finally on the East Coast. And then, you know, pulling back from the ocean, the beaches a little bit, the Northwest mushroom season I have not experienced. I've done one burn morel trip in Oregon, but we were east of the Cascades. So I'd really like to go out and do some of that, like Northern California, Washington, Oregon, coastal mushrooming, just to experience that sort of what I view is like, it's almost like the mushroom mecca because you get such a cool season. It's like you're picking chanterelles in February when I'm like hibernating essentially.
Yeah. Um, what sort of mushrooms are on your bucket list, and what are some mushrooms that you think that other people should put on their bucket lists?
Oh man. Well, top of that, I've never had a black trumpet.
What?
They don't grow in Colorado. Yeah, they do not grow in Colorado. So I would like to forage some black trumpets one day. Parisium, lion's mane are also quite rare in Colorado. We do have one species, but I've never found it.
What
And
species?
also not sure. It's Coralloides.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. and it grows like late summer, fall in our like canyon elevation, like mid elevation riparian habitats. It's like very specific, and then it's very rare in
Mm.
those habitats. So I just haven't spent much time looking for it, but I'd like to, whether it's here in Colorado or elsewhere, I'd like to find some of those in the wild. I've eaten them before and purchased them, but I've never found a wild one. Um,
And then what recommendations do you have for like just top of the food chain amazing mushrooms for other people?
yeah, you know, for me, the Rocky Mountains sort of, that's what I know the
Mhm.
best. And so kind of the top two, I would say, in the Rocky Mountains are the Rocky Mountain King bolete, which is Boletus rubriceps. It's our own species. Apparently, some of those taxonomies for the Boletus edulis group are changing, but for now it's Boletus rubriceps.
Mhm.
And then the rainbow chanterelle, which is our chanterelle down here. That one also, grows up kind of the Rocky Mountains and Northern Cascades and stuff. Um, but I've been told by more traveled mushroom hunters that have tried most of the chanterelles in North America that the rainbow chanterelle is the best tasting.
Mm.
It's one of the chanterelle species that are insect resistant, so you almost never find one that's buggy. The only trouble with them is they're not that common, and a good year happens maybe once every 7 or 8 years.
Oof.
Yeah.
Um, and same kind of things as other chanterelles. Like, are you looking under oak trees? What are you looking for?
Nope, we don't have oak here really. We have scrub oak or gamble oak,
Mm.
and they, as far as I know, don't grow with the oaks. They grow with pretty much every other native tree we have, though, coniferous tree at least. So I found them in spruce and fir. So we have like kind of three or four main forest types. Spruce fir is sort of our high elevation. That's where most of the mushrooms are.
Mhm.
We have ponderosa pine forest. That's where our lobsters grow. That's also where our chanterelles can grow. We have lodgepole pine forests, which are kind of a pure mid to high elevation pine. Um, I found lots of chanterelles in lodgepole. That seems to be kind of the best. And then we have some like mixed forests that sort of have a mix of multiple species. They will grow in there as well. And then in our southern part of the state, we also have more like pinyon juniper forests, and I know people that also find chanterelles in those sorts of habitats.
No way. So you guys have very little deciduous. I'm assuming just a lot of like quaking aspen.
Yeah, our main deciduous, are probably our most common deciduous, are the aspens, quaking aspen. Those are widespread throughout the mountains. And then along the river habitats, we have a couple native cottonwoods and then lots of native willows.
Wow. That's so crazy to hear. There's so many conifers there. Also, on a side note, I don't know if you've looked into the history of oaks, but I I do believe somewhere around 5 million years ago, oak trees are thought to have originated in what is now Colorado. So,
Really?
yeah, um, I used to listen to this podcast all the time that was about plant taxonomy and plant history and plant evolution. And there was a whole episode about oak evolution. And I think the epicenter of that evolution, if I'm somebody's going to correct me, but I think it was Colorado.
That's cool. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah. So oaks are very fascinating to me. I've always been so into them. We don't have that many in Michigan. We have 10 species of oaks, but it sounds like you have way less.
Yeah, we have one, maybe two. Bur oak is a common landscape tree here. It's might be native to the Eastern Plains, but our main one is gamble oak, which is just a scrub.
Hmm,
It rarely gets, taller than 20, 30 feet.
crazy. Um, so nuts, do you guys have hazelnuts?
We do have beet hazelnut. That's about it. We have pine nuts, of course. Um, there's some black walnuts. I think the black walnut native range might extend into Colorado a little bit, but they're common, semi-common in landscaping type habitats, lower elevation urban areas where they were planted. But that's it pretty much.
Crazy. So prior to European settlement in Colorado, what were the people predominantly eating there?
Fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
The only shooting stick with one-handed trigger pull adjustments has a new way to keep you at the top of your game. The Trigger Stick Apex. Built for sturdy support that adapts to unforgiving terrain with easy adjustments to make your big shots. With our DuraSteady 3-piece carbon leg design and interchangeable rock-solid clamp, nothing tops the Apex. The Trigger Stick Apex, only from Primrose.
It's the eastern side, pretty much the eastern half is Great Plains. So I assume, I don't know that much history, of history or ethnobotany about Colorado, but I assume that they were eating similar things to what they were eating in the Dakotas. Nowadays, most of that habitat has become agriculture.
Mm.
So, a lot of that, the Eastern Plains was lost, that sort of high elevation plains habitat. But we have a number of biscuit roots, bread roots.
Lomatium.
We have, Lomatium and Cymopterus. We have quite a few native onions. There is, I forget the genus name, but there's a rice grass here called Indian rice grass that I assume was a grain, was commonly used. Yeah, those are my assumptions. I don't actually know the ethnobotanical history of Colorado.
I'm assuming they probably had a lot of elk in their diet too.
For sure. Yeah. Elk, I'm sure the buffalo were here in high numbers, with the plains habitat, deer.
So speaking of that, everybody knows you as a forager, but before we got on the call, Luke, I was talking to him for a few minutes before he bailed on us, and he informed me that you're actually into hunting. Is this true?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do the full wild food gamut.
Okay, cool. So what kind of things have you hunted in the last year?
Last year I only hunted deer, whitetail and mule deer. But I will I guess for big game at least. I also do small game and birds. But I'll pretty much do anything. I really enjoy sort of the variety that you get, from hiking miles in the mountains chasing grouse to, the insane amount of effort that it takes to archery hunt a bull elk or a cow elk, to rifle hunting, pronghorn antelope down on the plains. I'll even do, squirrels and rabbits occasionally. We don't have the greatest squirrel hunting, pretty much pine eating squirrels, so they're not as tasty as some of the Midwestern squirrels. But yeah, and then I travel here and there for hunting occasionally. North Dakota, do some ducks, Nebraska pheasants, those sorts of things. Turkey every once in a while.
Wow. I'm really, really jealous of you and the North Dakota ducks. That is sounds awesome.
It's very cool. My buddy that I mentioned that's moving to Maine previously lived in North Dakota, and so that was kind of the reason I would go. So there were several years in a row where I would go up and do a week of duck hunting with him, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh man. Were you experiencing so you were in the central flyway. I'm assuming you're experiencing those clouds of ducks, right?
Yeah, there were a couple years where we hit it too late or too early, and it was a little bit tougher, but um, often it was, yeah. There was one year, I think one of the better years, maybe it was the first year I went. The ice came a little early, and so the snow geese were moving in. So we kind of got to do a mix of like mallards and snow geese.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's to see millions of snow geese get off a lake is pretty mind-boggling.
I can only imagine. Do you like the snow geese to eat them?
Yeah, I pretty much like all of the wild food or wild game I've eaten. Um, Snow geese, we tried just kind of straight up seared in a pan, treat it like a steak almost, don't overcook it. One of my favorite things to do with both Canada and snow geese is to make goose pastrami.
Hmm. How do you do that?
So I'll cure it and then smoke it. I use Hank Shaw's recipe. It's super simple. Just kind of cure the meat for a little while and then rub it with a like a heavy black pepper coating and smoke it.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's very good.
I've I've actually been toying with the idea that I really want to make a shirt that says "Save Manuman, Kill a Goose." You know, because Michigan has the highest population of Canada geese in the country, and we also happen to have the lowest population of wild rice. And they say
I
that
don't know.
a single goose family can eat like, many acres of rice plants.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah. So
And rice fed goose is probably delicious.
um I actually don't really enjoy the taste of Canada Goose that much, to be honest, but I'm also not like a great cook. I see you and Alan Burgo and all these Lorenzo, all these like great forager chef type people. And like I'm not that, like so I'm actually pretty my daughter refers to my cooking as she says that I'm a prison chef. So
Ouch.
yeah. So
Yeah. I don't I feel honored to be in the same group of people as Alan and Lorenzo because they're like more trained chefs than me. I'm just a home cook who's been doing it most of his life, and I like learning new things and I enjoy cooking. So definitely not classically trained, but I have a knack for figuring it out pretty quickly, I guess, and I enjoy it. Um, so yeah, it's really just about researching first and foremost, figuring out what things need, making some mistakes, and continuing to try until you figure it out. I use Alan a lot for recipe ideas when I need inspiration, and Hank Shaw is another one that I regularly reference to sort of become inspired when I'm not feeling inspired in my wild food endeavors. But yeah, I think cooking wild foods is something that a lot of people struggle with because there aren't really, the easy and well-known recipes that exist using these wild foods. And so you have to like take a couple extra steps to be like, okay, what sort of commonly cooked plant or mushroom is this close to, and how can I slot it into recipes that, use that same food? And you're also getting it in a more raw state. It's not wrapped up with a twisty tie in a grocery store. It's raw and takes a little bit more processing and effort to turn into what we sort of were raised to understand as food. And I think making that jump can be challenging for a lot of people, myself included, when I was first getting started, and still occasionally I struggle with new things.
yeah. Um my cooking is, first of all, I think there's like a couple dishes that I'm okay at, but for the most part, I tend to just make what I call man meals. Just sort of pile everything into a dish, make some sort of slop, and it it usually tastes fine to me. I don't mind it, but I would never like bring it to an event and like think like, oh, I'm gonna impress everybody with my cooking because it's not that great. But I last year I was talking to JB Douglas. He was at the Great Lakes Foragers Gathering, and he was telling me that I need to get this book. What's it? Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat.
Yes, that's a great book. It's right. Oh, it's down on my big bookshelf. I've got a
Okay.
book of like, or a shelf of like all the big cookbooks. So Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, and The Food Lab by Kenji Lopez are awesome.
So those things you would agree with JB that my cooking will improve if I read those books.
I will say your cooking will improve if you read those books and use the things that you learn from them.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah. So I can't just read it and then just like hope for the best. Oh,
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not the Matrix, at least,
yeah.
not quite the Matrix where we can plug in and download a book and have that knowledge. Gotta practice.
Yeah. So speaking of bad cooking, I don't know if you're ever listened to this podcast, but since I came on as co-host, I've been asking I have this question for every guest, and that is, what is the worst wild food that you have ever eaten?
That I've ever eaten.
Some people have had some pretty nasty things that they've told us. It's actually kind of funny.
Yeah, there are like three things that popped into my mind. One, the first was just, like some mustards can be quite bitter.
Hmm.
And so if you don't prepare them correctly, they don't lose that bitterness. So I've done some experimenting with fermenting mustards that turned out way too bitter and funky to eat. I tried fermenting burdock flower stalks that also just like became like hard, just like impossible to eat, like salty sticks. And then another thing that came to mind was the first and only time I've ever been maybe sickened by a wild food. And it was a mushroom that I've been eating my entire life, called a hawkswing. And I'm not 100% certain that the hawkswing is at fault because I may have also eaten some questionable food that day. I don't get food poisoning like almost ever.
Hmm.
In fact, I think this may have been the only time that I may have had food poisoning. I've got a pretty iron stomach.
Hmm.
Um, but it might have been food poisoning, but I had hawk's wings and I had a beer with dinner. And I don't drink very often, so I may have never had hawk's wings and alcohol before in my life, or I developed a new allergy. But the day before, somebody told me that their husband couldn't eat this hawk's wing mushroom and have alcohol. I was
Hmm.
like, oh, I've never heard of that before. And then the next day, I had hawk's wings and beer and was sick for like 6 hours the next morning.
Oh,
Um, that was not fun, and has sort of like I've been very hesitant to eat hawk's wings since then.
mm.
So I need to, if I find some this year, take it a little slow just to see if it's a new allergy I've developed, which would suck because those are a tasty mushroom. Um, and then the final thing that came to mind was people that like are willing to eat like the nastiest buggy old mushrooms. I'm like a treat it, like at the grocery store, you're picking out the best of the best generally. I
Hmm.
sort of, when I forage, I'm doing that. Like I'm picking the tender parts. I'm picking the good, like prime mushrooms that are in, good, solid, not buggy state in button form or, nice kind of pristine state. And I'm leaving behind the other ones because the animals can use them. And I don't need that, those extra, I don't need to be cutting around the bugs and dehydrating little bits and eating, I don't mind eating the maggots and the mushrooms, but there's a point where it becomes like more maggot than mushroom.
Yeah. That sounds
Um,
very gross, but also okay.
yeah, there are people that go way further than I'm willing to with those maggoty mushrooms. And, we get, especially our Portuguese or king boletes, can be very wormy some years because
Mhm.
it can be so dry, but they'll still fruit in certain microclimates, and then the fungus gnats find them immediately. So there are years where every single mushroom has got some maggots in it.
So what causes that again? I've always been curious about this. Lay this out for me.
So my understanding is that there are a number of species of gnats, flies essentially, that lay, their eggs on in either in the soil or on mushrooms as they're fruiting. And then the maggots quickly hatch and eat the mushroom as they're developing into, adult flies. There are of course, other insects that and other organisms that eat mushrooms, slugs and snails and all those, but we really don't have those here for the most part. We have slugs occasionally, but it's mostly fungus gnats.
Yeah. Um, I never knew that about the fly thing, and I've always been curious because you'll cut some mushrooms and you flip over the stem and you look and you're like, or the stipe, and you're like, oh my God,
Mhm.
there's some huge channels in there and gross.
Yes, there's occasions where, I'll find like a mushroom that looks perfect from the top and I'll cut it and it's like hollow, essentially.
Yeah. So why don't they ever? I mean, I know that they do occasionally, but most of the time they just focus on they don't focus on the cap, right?
Mhm.
So you could theoretically take a cap and then just dehydrate just the cap or something, right?
Yeah, I don't quite know how that works if they're, if some species are in the soil, as they're the flies, adult flies are laying them in the soil and they're hatching and crawling in from there, or it doesn't seem like they're attacking from the top down. It seems like they're attacking from the bottom up for the most part. Although some species will have, like our oyster mushrooms often will have channels through the caps, but not in the stems.
Hmm.
Um, but the porcinis are usually in the stems. And so what I do if I find like a pretty good one doesn't have a ton of holes, I'll just chase up the stem with my knife until I get to a point where I'm not seeing that many holes. And maybe
Hmm.
I'll cut it in half, and just take a look. And then the stuff that I cut off, I'll just bury back in the ground or spread around and leave behind.
So you can have future generations of flies.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, the crazy thing is that there's probably some association there that's like beneficial for the mushroom or something somehow.
Yeah, I don't know if they um, act as spore spreaders, or if they help with like the quicker decomposition. The mushrooms don't really, like chanterelles will produce insect repellent compounds, and I'm sure there are some other mushrooms that do it, but not nearly as often as plants do. Like plants, almost all the stuff that we use plants for is developed to protect them from insects.
Okay, that's cool. Um,
Like the mustard heat, the capsaicin in chilies. Um, there's so many examples of things that compounds that plants produce that we enjoy the flavor of, and they just make it to protect from insects.
pretty pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So I saw today, I don't know if it came out today, but I saw you had a video, one of your edible or nots, and it was about fairy ring mushrooms. I um Little quick background, I do mushroom hunting and I know plenty of species, but I'm way more focused on plants than I am on mushrooms. Explain to me, is a fairy ring a type of mushroom, or because I've seen many rings that have different mushrooms, it seems like. So can you lay this out for me?
Yeah, it's both. And I don't remember if the Instagram version got that or not, but in the longer TikTok version, I explained that lots of mushroom species make fairy rings, which is just a ring of mushrooms,
Mhm.
that essentially fruit from either, like a spore dispersal that was in a ring, or for some reason the mycelium is in a ring. Um, but for some reason, the fairy ring mushroom, Marasmius aureates, got the name. So I don't know why that one got the name first. If it was just, the first one that they had happened to observe doing it, when they were making mushroom taxonomy.
Mhm.
But for some reason that one got the name. But yeah, um, I've seen puffballs do it. I've seen Amanita muscaria, fly agarics do it. I've seen hawkswings do it. I've seen we have this cool little non-edible toothed mushroom called Hydnellum suaveolens that smells like very strongly of vanilla. I've seen that one grow in big fairy rings before, or like multiple fairy rings.
Hmm.
So yeah, I've observed a ton of different mushrooms doing them, but for whatever reason, Marasmius got the name.
Okay. And for the listeners, is it edible or not?
Yes, Marasmius aureates is edible. It's a great little edible mushroom that's common in lawns, but it also falls in the group that many people call little brown mushrooms
Mm.
and are cautioned to avoid for beginners because one of our most common deadly mushrooms is a little brown mushroom, and that's deadly Galerina marginata. In Colorado, that's our single most common deadly mushroom. Of the 3 deadly mushrooms we have in Colorado, that's the only one that I've ever seen, and I see it every year.
Mm. As far as deadly mushrooms goes, how deadly is deadly Galerina?
It's amatoxin, same as the deadly amanitas. So um, you eat one, a couple days later, day later, you start feeling flu-like symptoms. You might feel a little better, and then your liver stops working.
Yikes.
Yeah. So all the people that there are some good anecdotal articles online of people who have mistakenly eaten mushrooms with amatoxin, usually destroying angel or death cap, and realized their mistake and sort of told their story. Some people have survived, but generally, if you eat an amatoxin containing mushroom and they put you on dialysis and liver transplant like pretty much right away, and
Holy
you just try
moly.
to help your liver flush that toxin. It's pretty gnarly neurotoxin.
Wow. Um, what a bummer that it just kills you a couple days later. Could you imagine the people in the past figuring that one out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
I got real sick and then just
Everybody's blaming it on like other things until they finally figured out it was the mushroom.
yeah.
Yeah, so what what kind of other things do you have coming up this year that you are excited to announce? What can we leave everybody with here? Like you have upcoming events at all?
Um, I'm mostly doing private classes. My schedule's actually full this year for private classes. But I am teaching at the Eagle Mushroom Festival. I'm pretty excited about that. I taught on that one 2 years ago, and it's a lot of fun. If you're in Colorado and tickets are not sold out yet, you can grab tickets for the Eagle Mushroom Festival. The other big one here is Telluride Mushroom Festival, but I've never gone to that one because it's usually on a date that I have something already going on, and it can be kind of expensive, which I don't generally mind paying for, but the stars haven't aligned for the Telluride Mushroom Festival and me yet.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I'm just gonna continue doing my thing, posting videos, writing articles, sharing this knowledge with anyone who's interested in it. Um, yeah, I don't have any major things happening really.
Um, if somebody did want to book you out next year, how do they get a hold of you?
You can email me. There's a contact form on my website, which is foragecolorado.com, or reach out on Instagram, probably Instagram. That's the one that's most manageable in terms of contacting me. TikTok would probably work. Facebook, I can't really keep up with because of all the people on there. I mostly just post videos and then run away.
Uh,
Facebook has an interesting knack of creating a lot of controversy and negative comments. So
Yeah.
it's funny how that happens.
Yeah. Real quick on that note, how do you handle with such a large following, like getting emails or sorry, message requests? Like, are you checking that every day when you go in?
I am very good at keeping up on my Instagram messages, and I don't really get that many. I think people would be surprised at how few Instagram messages, larger. I think like when you get to the level of, Alexis, where you have millions of followers, it's impossible. But for me, I might get a couple a day that, I respond to. Pretty low quantity. So I actually like tell people to reach out if they have questions, and very few people take me up on it.
No way.
Surprisingly, yeah. But Instagram or email through my website is the best way to reach me.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I just want to say it's awesome, Orion. Your videos are so cool. You seem like such a cool dude, and like you said earlier in the conversation, I really do hope one day I can meet you in person. So maybe once my racing partner finally poops out on me. That's right, I'm talking about you, Gil. I'll invite you out to go racing.
Yeah, I would love that. And it's been an honor to chat with you, Clay. I'm so glad to finally meet you, and I really appreciate the kind words. And if you ever find yourself in Colorado, hit me up. We'll go find some stuff.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. Well,
thank you.
Yeah, I'll talk to you next time.
Yeah.
And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're listening to. Also, if you could leave a review, that would help us out. And you can check us out on Instagram or at publiclychallenged.com. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show.
When you go out there and the fish are where you think they are, any one of these casts could be the bite. It's the most exciting fishing that I know, right here at Hawks Cave.
Oh, that's awesome!
Experience the best saltwater fishing the world has to offer. Don't miss Thursdays with Saltwater Experience, brought to you by Golden Boat Lifts, every Thursday night from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern on Waypoint TV, the destination for outdoor entertainment. On Mondays, head offshore with Captain Scott Walker and Steve Roger for breathtaking deep-sea adventures.
Coming to me, coming to me, coming to me. Double. He's jumping, he's jumping, he's jumping. Oh! Look at that belly.
Don't miss Mondays with Into the Blue, brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern.
Tell a few fish stories along the way.
On Waypoint TV, the destination for outdoor entertainment.